It says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
It's not technically yet. It's preparing. If you guys have questions for me during this, let's use the chat.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening for Beaverton School District's virtual town hall. I'm Maureen Wheeler, Communications Officer for Beaverton School District, and I will be the moderator tonight. This town hall is being live streamed to Facebook and is also being recorded. We will post the event once completed on the district's YouTube channel. We have been receiving your questions over the past week and also tonight during this event, so please pose your questions in the comment section on Facebook. Please keep it respectful and focused. We want to get through as many of your questions as possible tonight. We are scheduled for 1 hour and may be able to extend for a short time. If we don't get to every question, we will make sure to get them all answered. We will also be looking at doing more of these town halls in the future, so let's get started. Tonight, we are pleased to be joined by Beaverton School District Superintendent Don Grotting and several district leaders. Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Ginny Hansman. Deputy Superintendent for Operations and Support Services, Carl Mead. Associate Superintendent for Business Services, Mike Schofield. Chief Human Resources Officer, Sue Robertson. Chief Information Officer, Steve Langford. Executive Administrator for Student Services, Danielle Hudson. Administrator for Multilingual Programs, Toshiko Maurizio. Administrator for Equity and Inclusion, Patrick McCreary. I would now like to ask Superintendent Grotting to make some brief opening comments.
Thank you, Maureen. Good evening, and I also want to thank everyone to our first virtual town hall meeting. This meeting is an effort to share information and also answer questions in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we begin answering questions, I want to especially thank our families, students, and staff for your courage, understanding, and resiliency during these unprecedented times. To our parents and other family members, thank you for helping us educate your students through distance learning. The partnership between school and family has never been so essential. To our students, thank you for being able to adapt so quickly to distance learning and your willingness to work with your family and teachers during this difficult time. Your grit does not go unnoticed. And to our staff, your unselfishness to put your students first is amazing. Your ability and willingness to create and try new methods to engage, teach, and support our students academically, socially, and emotionally, and to just provide some basic needs has been a model for our entire state. I also want to take this time to thank our school board for their support and guidance through this difficult time. Tonight, we will try to answer your questions to the best of our ability. If we do not have the answers, we will go back and research your questions and get back to you as soon as possible. At this time, I'd like to turn it back over to our communications director and moderator for tonight, Maureen Wheeler, for our questions to begin. Maureen, I think you're muted.
So let's get to some questions. We've heard a lot about remote learning. There seems to be quite a bit of variability between the amount of instruction and student contact across schools and teachers, even within the same grade level. Will there be more direction from the district in regards to remote learning instruction?
Well, I'll go ahead and answer that one. Our guidance has been developed to meet a wide variety of challenges and needs for all of our students across the district. This flexibility causes challenges for students, families, and it's really important that we try all different ways of learning for our kids. The guidance has been to have asynchronous learning as well as synchronous learning, so that in a classroom K-12, that is going to look different in a kindergarten class versus a high school class. So what we have done in teaching and learning is try to develop many different methods in order to make sure our remote learning is appropriate for elementary, middle, and high school. It will look different in every classroom, and it will look different with every teacher. As you know, we're all learning along the way. Our teachers, this is the first time that they have engaged in this work. It's the first time our parents have been involved in it, and the first time that our kids have been working on this. So a lot of planning has gone into it to make sure that we are guiding and directing our students as well as possible. But there's definitely bumps along the way, and that's why we're encouraging parents and students to provide feedback along the way as well.
Here's another question, Jenny. Students need structure and a regular schedule with their teachers and classmates, even if it's a 20 to 30-minute check-in. Regularly scheduled interactions and connections with students and their teachers will help not only with academic success, but with students and families' mental health. Can you explain why Beaverton chose to have only asynchronous learning versus a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning?
We are actually blending both of those. At the secondary level, you'll see more asynchronous learning, more so than at the elementary level. But we are trying to provide some structures within the day. We have office hours set up for our secondary students. We also are having many Zoom gatherings with classrooms. Fridays are used to do whole staff meetings sometimes, and all classroom meetings at some time. So we actually are blending both. You will see it differently depending on what classroom you're in. Again, the differences are vast between a elementary classroom and a secondary classroom. And there may be times where that families can dial in to certain things that they can ask teachers for, but it's really a challenge to make sure that all kids are involved at the same time. We have given guidance to teachers to develop a schedule for their kids so they know what that schedule looks like, whether it be interacting with a PE teacher or interacting with their own teacher on English language arts. So there's a lot of variance between the grade levels and the classrooms. And parents, we're just really asking you to talk to your teachers or talk to your principal if you are desiring a more structured approach, or if you're needing more flexibility, because many families are trying to balance having kids at home plus their own work that they're trying to do from home, remote learning, as well as their own jobs. So it's really difficult for each family to manage that. So talk to your teacher and talk to your principal if you desire a little bit more structure in your day.
Here's another follow-up on remote learning. Is remote learning considered voluntary? If kids don't participate, will they be held back?
It isn't necessarily voluntary. It is definitely something that they are required to do. Students are expected to engage in remote learning, and as they cannot be held back, and they need to make sure that they're engaged so that we can assess their learning. We know how well they're doing. We can forecast it for next year and make sure that they're arriving at their learning targets appropriately. So no, it's not, you must engage in remote learning. It's really important for kids.
So this is probably a question for Patrick and Danielle, maybe together. Danielle, maybe starting. How does the current distance learning actually support equity and access to education for students with disabilities?
So the Beaverton School District has been working really closely with the Oregon Department of Education to build a plan for how to address complex needs of students. So some of the things that we have done in the district is one is making sure that students with complex needs have the equipment they need in order to learn. That has been things like making sure that students who are blind or visually impaired have access to their vision equipment, braille readers, different tools for that. Additionally, students who need an iPad versus a Chromebook, we've worked with IT to get those distributed. We've done a range of either pickup or actual personal delivery to student homes using the appropriate social distancing measures. Additionally, we've adopted an I do, we do, you do instructional framework. And what that looks like is case managers or special ed teachers or special ed providers are doing either asynchronous or synchronous learning, which really demonstrates the skill we want students to work on based on their IEP goals. Then the case manager or provider consults with the parent in that I do stage, so the parent also knows what the skill is and what the student needs to be working on. And the next stage is a we do stage where the special ed provider works with the student either on the phone, maybe through a Zoom meeting or some other kind of means through a synchronous opportunity to practice together that skill. And then lastly is the you do stage. And that's really the stage where we know parents are having to take on a big lift here to work directly with their children on those goals. So that's why the consultation piece is really important so that parents have the visuals, they know the structure, and then they can practice it at home. And then additionally, starting on Friday, we will be delivering packets to students with disabilities throughout our district to help support and supplement the learning that's taking place by the special ed teacher and the related services providers. So we're definitely making a commitment to make sure that students continue to be able to make progress towards meeting their IEP goals in distance learning.
And I would add to what Danielle said that one of the key components of ensuring equity throughout our district is to focus on culturally responsive and sustaining practices. And so ever since we started working with students in a remote learning situation, we've been emphasizing that teachers should really be connecting with their students individually and their families. And so one of the ways we're doing that is by differentiating for each student individually in the context in which they're learning. So the goal really is to work with our students to ensure that each student's needs are being addressed individually by the teacher and all the resource staff that they have working with them.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up with another question that we have received tonight. BSD has a 36% free and reduced lunch program. 26% of our students are ELL, 13% with disabilities. What is our plan to keep less privileged families re-engaged and prevent a bigger educational gap going into next year? And Jen, that might be for you. And Dawn, you might have something to add to that as well.
Yeah, well, I think that is our biggest challenge, and we're really committed to making sure all of our kids are receiving the appropriate instruction. Some of the things that we're doing, we're reaching out, our multilingual department and their translators, and Toshiko might want to talk a little bit more about that, but we're reaching out to families that may or may not have access with internet and just provide those resources for them. I think that is our number one piece. We've talked to our principals about making sure that we're finding out which students we need to further engage in so that they have the appropriate materials that they need, the resources they need, and are able to access the curriculum just as all of our students do. And they're the ones that we are definitely putting our focus in with everything that we plan out in teaching and learning to be equitable for all kids. So we're working hard on that piece.
Just to expand a little bit on what Jenny says, it really hits at the core of equity in looking at all of our students. And I believe that when the Department of Education mandated the distance learning, they really took into account equity issues of some of our more marginalized and underserved populations, and which include our second language students, our students of poverty, and other students with disabilities or whatever. And it really mandates and causes us to figure out what are the resources that are needed to make sure that these students do not fall through the cracks, and at no harm to all students, no harm to any students. So it is a challenge, and it's a difficult task. We're not going to get it right the first time, but we're doing everything all the way from we're serving thousands and thousands of meals every week to find out how can we serve these students, and maybe it's not at a site, maybe it's delivering food, to connectivity. We're estimating somewhere probably between 2,000 to 4,000 of our students do not have connectivity. And our Steve Lankward, our technology director, we're working on that to get hotspots for students, because really this distance learning, it's really, when we're talking about instruction and evaluating, and whether it's grading or everything, in some instances, it's not the academic progress of the students we're grading, it's their ability to have access to quality instruction.
Sorry, Maureen, I could speak to the multilingual department and all of our families that speak a language other than English. So the multilingual department has made about 5,700 calls to families indicating they need interpretation. We had over 30 callers making these calls to check in on these families. We asked them if they had a Chromebook, technology device to engage in remote learning. We even asked them if they had access to the internet. We asked them if they needed information on community resources such as food banks, clothes closet, et cetera, to ensure the basic needs were met. Then we reviewed the remote learning process and what parents could expect. We kept track of which families we connected with and which families we still need to reach out to. And our callers continue to check in with families as needed.
That's great. Thank you. It seems like the plan is to just keep students where they are, missing out on 3+ months or a third of their education year. How do we keep our kids on track academically? And this kind of fits into the last question a little bit, because I think it affects all children and how we'll be looking at next year.
I think that piece, we really hear you. We hear the parents. We know how much this is new for your family. And I think with the teacher support and the principal support, it's about having that engagement with the family and the student and the teacher, and making sure that kids are engaged and they're working on the things that they're asking their teacher to do, and they're involved. And some of the lessons that have been provided, especially when it comes to the elementary level too, have been there to make sure that there's hands-on learning happening. There's work on the computer. So any way the family can help engage, teachers are really doing their best to make sure that their kids are learning. And yes, as Dawn said, is it going to be perfect? No. And there are going to be places that all summer long and into the fall, we're going to have to make sure that kids are picking up where they left off, and families can help in that. And just, again, make sure that you're in contact with your teacher and letting them know what you're seeing from your child and what you're hoping that they can learn more of. So it's that connection between families and kids and students.
Just to expand on that, that is a great question, and a question that's going to challenge us to look at where we're going to be at when we come back in the fall. And hopefully we come back in the fall where students are coming into our bricks and mortar, but I think it's going to challenge us to look at our scope and sequence to really and truly evaluate where each child is coming to us, and then meet that child where he or she's at and take them. For us not to assume we can start at the same place that we normally start out. It's going to be very important for us to take that into consideration. And I really believe that that's what our teachers do every day. When our kids come, they really look at all of our kids where they're at every day and differentiate instruction. But it's really going to be even more essential next year as we come back to school in the fall.
And Don and Ginny, I think one of the nice things we have going for us is that this is a collective experience. This is something we're all sharing. And so the idea is those tracks that have defined the on track, those are changing right as we speak. And so we're working right now to keep students as on track as we can, but also looking ahead as teachers to look at where we need to be when they come back to us on the other side of this. So that notion of really working with students to do as much as we can right now, but then also think about what we can do to support them on the other side so that we can help get to that ultimate end goal of success for every student.
Right. All right, here's the next question. Why isn't the school year being extended into summer? And Don and Ginny, you might want to speak to this.
Yeah, part of that reason is there's some technical aspects to it. There's also some monetary aspects. The technical aspects is all of our classified and our certified employees. We have collectively bargaining agreements that we're under, and which explicitly talks about the days that they work, the days that they don't work. We're right now looking at summer school, trying to, especially for those students who are going to need some credit recovery and or some extra special help, and especially if they're in some sort of special education classroom and we need to do some extended learning in some instances where that needs to take place. Those are some of the reasons that we're not able to just say, hey, we're going to go above and beyond. There's also the monetary issues right now. And I see some questions in the chat that, what's this COVID-19 going to do to us? And it's going to hamper not only the Beaverton School District, but the 196 other school districts throughout our state dramatically. As most of you know, our general fund dollars come mainly from state income taxes. And we were so excited just 90 days ago that we had this corporate activities tax that was going to bring additional resources to our students. It was going to relieve some of the pressure that our teachers and other support staff are under to deliver a quality education. And now that is looking rather bleak. To be honest, we're state economists. We could be looking at anywhere from a $1 to $3 billion state general fund shortfall. The May forecast will come out on May 20th, and that will give us some more information. But right now, school districts across Oregon and across the nation, for that matter, are really hunkering down to prepare for some of the shortfalls that we're going to see. And it's not going to be when, or if, it's just going to be how much. And so I don't know if our CFO, Mike Schofield, if you want to add any to that, because I see quite a bit in the chat regarding budget.
Thanks, Don. You handled it beautifully. I would just add that, again, that May 20th date is critical in terms of this state revenue forecast that's coming. I think the legislature will be called in for a special session at that point, and they'll have to deal with the shortfall. The state has to balance their budget just like we do. So we are looking forward to seeing how they'll resolve it. I will say that the silver lining in this recession is that our state is in a far better position than they were during the last recession. So we are hopeful that there's some reserves there in addition to some federal dollars to help us as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be bleak in the near term.
The only other thing I would like to add, and BEA president reminded me, and we keep reminding folks, thank goodness for the corporate activities tax. While we may go through some very rough times for the next school year and maybe even a couple years, that is a corporate activity tax will be there, and it will provide additional resources at some point that will allow our kids additional opportunities and also lessen the load on our staff so that they can pay more individual attention to each and every one of our students.
I want to go back a little bit more because we have a lot of parents asking questions about with the move to the pass or incomplete grading for high school students, will their cumulative GPA only reflect the first semester grades from the school year? And Don, you could probably take that.
Yeah, so when the Department of Education, they engage multiple stakeholders, community-based organizations, superintendents, parents, teachers, OEA, OSEA, OSBA, and COSA and others. And the primary focus was to do no harm to students. So a student's GPA cannot be harmed. And that was the reason for the pass fail. And really looking at equity, as we know that some of our students are going to be more equipped to do distance learning than some of our more marginalized populations. So a student's GPA will not be harmed in any way. And if a student was passing the course and having success in the course on March 13th, that student will receive a pass. If the student was not, they will receive an incomplete. But what we're doing under the direction of Dr. Franco at secondary schools, where credit at our high schools is so important, we're tracking each and every student. And if they were at an incomplete or not having success on March 13th, we're engaging both the student and their families and finding ways to provide them additional opportunities to show their proficiency in that particular course.
Okay. There's a lot of thought about our seniors and graduation and some of those special activities that happen at the end of the year. Will senior graduation be virtual? If yes, will this be done via YouTube? And how will you let seniors know?
All right. Once again, under the direction of Dr. Franco and working with all of the secondary high school principals, they are working and exploring ways to celebrate this important life-changing event of our high school seniors for 2020. At a minimum, there will be virtual graduations. We are still holding out hope, although it may be light hope, we are holding out hope. And if we can possibly have graduations in person, we will do them in July at each high school football stadium. We will make that happen. So we're holding out hope for that. And we continue to get great ideas, not only from our principals, staff, but some of our most creative ideas are coming from our students. So if you have some great creative ideas, please let us know. I know that in some smaller districts, my son's a teacher in his district, they're going to have a drive-through graduation where parents and the student will actually drive through, they'll get out, they'll get up, receive their diploma and drive through. Now that is a school district that's going to have about 80 seniors graduating and not thousands, hundreds upon hundreds of seniors. But if you have any great ideas out there, please relay them to your school's principal. And once again, Dr. Franco is looking, and we want to make sure that 2020 is special for each and every one of these graduating seniors.
Here are a couple of more questions about year-end activities. When will yearbooks be distributed and how will families be notified? And Jenny, you might have some information about that.
Well, I do know that there has been some cases where yearbooks right now are being done and given out. But the advice is to look to your principal in your building and find out when theirs will be. And they will definitely be the ones that will let students know and parents know when those yearbooks will be coming out. There definitely will be yearbooks. Those are monumental senior pieces that must happen, and they will happen before the end of the year. Just check with your teachers and your principals at individual buildings. It won't all be at the same time. They'll be different depending on their school. So look for information about it will be coming out.
Okay. Carl, I think Carl and maybe Jenny, both of you, how and when will students get their belongings from their lockers and from their desks?
Good question. We had just provided guidance to our principals this week, actually on Monday, on how we wanted those items to be collected. So we're going through that process now. They're looking at the staff that they have available in each building, and each principal will be notifying families of when that can actually occur at each site. It will be different throughout the district. It varies drastically. As you can well imagine, clearing a first grade classroom and individual needs of what's in those desks compared to several thousand lockers at a high school. I know very specifically that Beaverton High School is actually in that process right now of clearing lockers out. Dr. Irwin is planning on notifying the community of Beaverton High School within the next week of what their process is for picking those up. And I would imagine schools will assign specific days for that to happen. Everything's being collected in clear plastic bags. And we're gathering those items with gloves and the sort, so we don't want to spread any germs or anything like that in the process. So all 53 of our sites are going through that process. Look for information from each specific principal on that process in the near future.
Anything to add, Jenny?
Nope, he said it well. And again, it's going to be a pretty big task to make sure all of that happens in a fashion that everybody can get their belongings. So yes.
All right. Here's one for Mike, our CFO. When will refunds for spring sports be processed?
That's another thing we're working on right now. We had some conversation with the athletic directors last week, and our finance department right now is working on a way to get those in and uploaded and out to folks. So we don't have a specific time or a date certain yet, but we know that we are working on it to get those back to folks.
Okay. Here's a question for our Chief Human Resource Officer, Sue Robertson. What does hiring look like given the school funding situation?
Good question. We'd like to know some of that. So everything that's associated with the Student Investment Act right now is on hold, so we won't be hiring for that. We do have enough attrition generally through the course of a school year that we end up having to replace positions. So there will be hiring. We just don't know to what extent at this time.
Okay. So we still have some bond work done from that's going to happen across the summer, construction during the summer. Carl, could you maybe give us a little bit of an idea of what kind of projects are happening this summer?
Absolutely. We've got a variety of things happening. We have several schools that will have HVAC improvements made over the course of the summer. 2 of our sites will have seismic improvements. That's Beaver Acres as well as Aloha High School. We started Aloha High School last year. We will complete that process this year. In addition to that, Aloha High School's entire roof will also be replaced. Barnes roof will be replaced. Terra Linda, the entire school will be repiped and bathrooms remodeled over the summer. We have several of our schools for security upgrades. We'll be installing cameras at our high schools, in our 5 older high schools this summer. We're making some significant improvements at Westview High School for the CTE program, and just some general security upgrades across the district. There's some other minor things here and there where we're replacing a freezer in a school. We're doing all kinds of repairs throughout all of our schools, but there's probably about 15 to 18 projects sponsored by the bond this summer. So we've got a lot in the hopper.
Carl, could you explain, if I'm sitting out there and I'm saying, hey, we're headed for this somewhat of a financial cliff, why would we be doing all this work right now?
Good question. These The resources that we're utilizing for this work is from the bond that was passed by our voters nearly 7 years ago now. And so we have an obligation to complete the work that was promised to our community, and we're following through on that. We have another year of this bond remaining, and we've got $680 million that was passed for this bond to complete that work. So we're in the process of doing that. It's not something we can put on hold, as we've got a lot of our facilities that have ongoing improvements that are needed. And so we're just completing what the expectation is of our community. We can't utilize these funds for any other purpose. We can't turn around and use them for staffing. If we're facing staffing shortages, we cannot do that. We cannot buy general school supplies with these dollars. They have to be used for improvement of our facilities. That's the sole purpose of bond dollars.
That's excellent. During this pandemic, we've been responding to the needs of our community with meals and food boxes from community partners. How is meal distribution going at the school level and at bus stops?
I would say outstanding. It's not to say that we don't have areas to improve, and we absolutely want to know where those areas are if we don't have students receiving meals. We currently are serving meals from 20 of our school facilities across the district, referred to as grab and go meals, served between 11 and 12 each day. We are also having 20 bus routes throughout the school district, serving 50 different stops in various areas. Most recently, we opened 3 new sites: Springville, Westview, and Nancy Riles. Those are schools that typically would not qualify for our summer food program, which is the umbrella in which we're functioning right now. But we did get permission from ODE, Nutrition Services Department, to be able to open those 3 sites for access for students in those areas. So going incredibly well. We're nearing well over 6,000 meals per day. Well over 100,000 meals have been delivered to students thus far since we began. And we're delivering well over 1,000 boxes to families approximately every 2 weeks. That's in addition to one of our high schools just distributed 60 boxes of food today to families. So we've got multiple efforts happening throughout the district. That's work from volunteers, several of our staff is well involved in those projects. So if we have areas to improve, we definitely want to hear about it. If we have families in need. In addition to that, we are also serving families of severe need, where families may not have access to a vehicle. There may be a parent who's does not have the ability to walk their children to a school or a bus stop to be able to get a grab and go meal. We are actually doing home delivery. And so we're doing that. And that is volunteers are needed for those services throughout the district. So we appreciate those people who have stepped up, many of our staff across the district and others as well. So thank you.
All right, I'm going to go back to some of our teaching and learning questions, because we have quite a bit of questions in the chat room and that have been submitted by our followers here. What steps is BSD taking to enable teachers to record Zoom class meetings and other instructional videos that students can replay on demand as many times as required to achieve mastery?
So the Zoom is a new tool for all of our teachers as well as all of our families. So we're learning along the way. Our teachers are learning how to record videos, record Zoom chats, do a lot of new and innovative things on Zoom, as we all are learning right now. And that takes a great deal of planning, along with making sure that our kids are able to access it at home as well. So they have been instructed that they can record some of these videos to make sure they're accessible to all kids. And on some of them, if they're asked to, I just heard that end of that question that referred to see them over and over. And so most of them are recorded, so that if a parent were to want a child to look at it more than once, there's definitely opportunity to do that. And again, because it's such a learning curve for us all, teachers are being extremely creative on trying new and innovative ideas on their Zoom chats and their Zoom videos every day. So hopefully that's going to help in getting that those learning targets that are needed for kids and a venue in order to see those at home.
Okay. How can parents send innovative teaching ideas to BSD?
Well, there's several different ways in order to do that. Teaching and learning is asking for feedback. We're hoping to have that up and ready on the website. Plus, we're doing it internally with teachers. So the best way would be to kind of give some of those ideas to your teachers, and the teachers can forward them to teaching and learning department. Our department is working hard on the distance learning for all and making sure that we're hearing all feedback from teachers and parents. So any way you can get that through the website, through teaching and learning, through your principal, through your teacher, please get it, because we're ready. Our TOSAs, we have teachers on special assignment that are geared to doing all of this work and have done an incredible job. So we'd really love any ideas that people have to give.
Okay. Here's something for Steve Langford, our Chief Information Officer. Recently, on behalf of my high school exchange student, I placed a call to the BSD Student Help Desk. The wait time was 1 hour. 15 minutes later, the wait time was still over 1 hour. In the face of such overwhelmed resources, is BSD seeking technically oriented volunteers for help?
It's a great question. The Student Help Desk was something that we started only a couple of weeks ago, and we did it while we were distributing about 10,000 Chromebooks for elementary students. Staff were highly leveraged doing both projects. We have added staff into the help desk because the wait times were long. We're seeing the wait times drop now. I think partially is due to the extra staff we've put in to the help desk. And also as teachers and students and families are becoming more comfortable with the applications used and the devices used, we're seeing the request level off a bit. We are always happy to hear ideas, happy to take feedback on new ways of doing things. So I'd encourage you to submit those.
Thank you. This year was already impacted by budget shortfalls before COVID-19. How well or poorly is the district positioned to do things like beef up technology resources for ongoing remote learning, increase sanitation procedures, and other items in the new normal for return to school? And I think we could have multiple people respond to that.
Don, do you want to start?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. It will be a challenge, especially looking in to next year as we start to begin to prepare for next year. Just to give folks out there, we've already instituted some, definitely you've heard some hiring freezes, but also some spending freezes to ensure that we can preserve positions for next year. I think that, I don't know, Steve can probably talk to this a little bit. We were so fortunate that when we passed the last bond, that right now, as far as devices and everything, we're in fairly good shape. But that bond, as that bond expires and our devices become older and we have more devices and more devices taxing our system, I know that Mr. Langford's had to increase our capacity. I know right now, sometimes our system is even slowing down with so many folks using the system through distance learning. It's caused this, but we are, I would say we are as in good a position as we could be, considering some of the budget issues that we went through. We were really excited about SIA dollars, and we were going to be in really great shape, and nobody expected this virus to come in and do what it's done. So I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Don. I would just add to that over 80 cents of every dollar we spend is on people. We're a very people-intensive business. Again, thanks to the bond, we were able to transition fairly quickly to getting some devices out to students. But moving forward, it's going to be a tough go ahead of us. As Don mentioned, spending restrictions. We have restricted spending because we know that every dime we save this year will help protect a colleague going into next fall.
Maureen, I would add that with regard to sanitation, we have some excellent procedures in place within our schools. We go through and do touch points on a daily basis. We will continue to do that. as we move forward into next school year. One of the pieces we're going to have to look at, though, is increasing the number of supplies that we have readily available in classrooms. This is going to have to be a shared effort throughout our district, as we've got a lot of bodies in our schools, and for us to be able to do and make sure we do a thorough job to sanitize classrooms, all the touch points, we'll need to make sure that those supplies are also in classrooms as we go forward. More
The
so.
only other thing I'd like to add, Maureen, is right now, as you know, there's a couple different COVID care acts that will provide some additional dollars to schools. When that money arrives to our state and how the money is distributed is yet to be finalized, but we are tracking all of those extra expenses that we have had to, that we've incurred because of COVID-19, and we are hoping to get reimbursed for some of those expenses as we move forward. But as you alluded to, I think the way that we operate in schools, in our society for the next 2 to 3 years is going to be different, and there are going to be some added costs, and we need to begin thinking about how to budget those costs and how to possibly recover some of those costs if there are funds available.
So there's a question on Facebook is, does BSD plan to add a local option levy to our November election ballot?
I think at this time, I don't think we're planning to add a local option levy to the ballot. I know that the school board, along with senior management and others, we are having discussions about the possibility of going out for another bond in 2021, once again, to repair our buildings, to provide maintenance for our buildings, to replace some of our buildings. We're looking at some of the different seismic issues that we have. We want to make sure that our students are in safe structures, but as well as looking at the last bond, as I said before, really set this district up in a great fashion for technology. And as this bond expires, that's something else that we're going to have to be looking at again as technology changes, as our devices grow older. So right now, I believe that we are looking at going out for another bond in 2021. I think that's something that we're going to have to look at is, what is this economy going to look like? Right now, we have families that are struggling, and I think we'll have to do some polling and to really gauge where our community is at that time.
We'd also want to make sure that our viewers understand that we already have a local option levy that funds about 300 teachers, certified teachers in our classrooms. So we're grateful to the community for that resource. Several questions on our Facebook comment section is about preparing for September. How are we going to prepare to return to school safely amid COVID-19, as there will not be a vaccine yet? If we return to schools as normal in the fall, we will end up being quarantined again by October. I'm wondering what steps are being taken so that students can go in person school in September, but remain safe from having another spike in COVID cases. And some examples that some other followers are sharing about, obviously reducing the number of students in hallways, cafeterias, classrooms, and such.
I think several of us could probably respond to this. First off, it's similar to what I stated earlier. It's about cleaning our facilities, making sure that they are thoroughly cleaned, and going through those procedures. We'll have to do some staff trainings as well, again, as we can't depend in elementary school just on 2 custodial staff to clean an entire building each and every day. We're going to have to come up with some new practices. I would say also we'll be working with principals for transitions of students between grades in schools. It may be at the high school, the middle school, elementary school, to limit the number of students who are actually accessing hallways at the same time. Teaching and learning, as well as operations department, will be working with our principals to establish some of that criteria so that, again, we can limit the number of individuals crossing paths at exposure to one another.
I think to add to that, Maureen, so much of it's going to depend on guidance from our governor and the Department of Education regarding social gathering. that is really where we're taking our guidance, in addition to Oregon Health Authority, who are working closely with the governor's office to give us guidance on our social distancing. But I can see some major changes having to take place, the way we do business, the way we interact with one another, our engagement with students. And I think that it will just be interesting the next 2 to 3, 4 months. And then also we are, just to let folks know, we're preparing, because what's going to happen if this virus rears its head again next year, and to be prepared for that. As a school district, as a community, it may look different in different parts of our state. But the major issue, I think, will really be guidance that will be directed to us from the Department of Education in conjunction with the governor's office.
I would just simply add to that, Maureen, that outside of the classroom, outside the school, procedures that we implemented early March, for example, in transportation, we're wiping down seats. We will most likely continue that effort. It's not an effort we've done necessarily before, but our bus drivers took that on, and they were wiping down seats each and every day, the start of the day, the end of the day, after their runs, just to make sure that we were cleaning as much as possible, those various touch points.
Great. I have a 5-year-old that will be a kindergarten next fall. I know I can register online, but also need to come to the office to complete other forms. What is the process for that? And Steve, you might have some intel, as well as Jenny.
Yeah. And Steve might, but as far as I know, it is online enrollment, and all of the documents should be uploaded onto the online application. Is that correct, Steve? Did I get that right?
You absolutely got that right. The online enrollment will allow parents to upload documentation, and it can get processed by the front office.
I was going to say, and Steve, for some folks who may not have that access to technology or even know how to do that, I know that we've discussed about, we do not want to turn any of our folks away from having an education, but also for us to be able to walk them through that, and to make allowances for those folks that just simply do not have access to technology. Because as I said before, and you've talked about, we may have somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 of our families who do not have access to technology.
Yes, paper forms are available as well, and we will absolutely process any enrollment, whether it comes in online or through paper.
All right. What systems are in place that drive accountability on the part of teachers? We're hearing the wide variability of programming that students are experiencing, and differences between phase 1 and phase 2 and now phase 3. Can you give us a little bit of intel on that, and how we're following up with our teachers?
So distance learning is new for everyone right now. It's a very different environment, obviously, than a classroom, a physical classroom. So there is some flexibility with that. However, overall evaluation is very different than supervision. So teachers continue to be accountable for job performance, for district standards, for policies, following all of those, and for anything performance related. So there will be flexibility around the delivery of instruction because this is so new, but they will continue to be subject to supervision.
Okay. The plan for weighted staff allocation based on a % of free and reduced lunches is great. When is the district taking the snapshot to determine what % of free and reduced lunch each school has? With COVID-19 related layoffs, it seems very likely that there will be a big change in the number between March 2020 and August, September 2020. Maybe Sue or Mike?
I could handle this one. I think we used February this year as the month that was our most recent data for the SAM. I know that that's a critically important piece, and we've been working with principals, even as we work with our buildings, to make sure that we pick a month and stick with that month so that we can encourage folks to get their applications in, because that is the basis we use. But I believe this year it was February. If not, we'll get better information out.
Okay. Can you help us understand how the equity lens has been applied specifically to elementary? For example, some of the assignments require supplies and some students have daily circle time while others are meeting once a week, if that.
Well, I think I'll go ahead and start that, and maybe Pat can chime in a little bit. But equity seems to be, as I said before, really at the top of our radar, and we need to make sure that all supplies are given to kids and make sure that they have everything that they need across the system. So our TOSAs in teaching and learning have, along with our administrators, have developed a plan that is consistent across all schools and all grade levels in the elementary schools. And with that, because it is a consistent curriculum that's going across, all teachers are teaching similar activities if you're in one school versus another. And all of them will have reached those learning targets by the time they start next year. If hopefully they are receiving access to any technology that they need, any resources they need. And teachers put a certain spin or a certain personality style to their teaching, so it may be different from one school to another, but it is geared towards reaching that same target so that all kids are learning the same curriculum during this time. Pat, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the foundation of that consistent curriculum, that's really one of the key components of equity, is making sure that we have the same curriculum that we offer to all students. I do think it has looked different in elementary, largely because of the work that we needed to do to ensure connectivity as much as possible for our families. And then once having done that, we're still working on connecting with the students and their families, and then identifying where those technology gaps are or connectivity gaps are so that we can find other ways of doing that. And I think that that is admittedly a work in progress. That's something that we're still working on doing. But that notion of offering the consistency with also the flexibility and the differentiation for the teachers as they administer this, reminding them that the emphasis really is on establishing the well-being and the connection with the family and the student, and then also delivering the curriculum in as consistent a manner as possible. That's the intent. That's where we're at.
So Maureen, I'm going to put myself in a parent's position a little bit and say, well, what if I'm one of these parents and for some reason, I just don't feel my student's getting what he or she needs, or whether it's in comparison to possibly one of my other students who may be getting a lot more. And when we really talk about the equity, so for Jenny or somebody else, if I'm a parent, what should my course be?
Well, I definitely think it's that communication between the family and the teacher. And then again, if there's two students that they're referring to, really to talk to the principal on that topic, that there's a difference between two students at different places. But I definitely encourage people to speak up and to say, what does your student need? You know, your parents know their kids the best, and they often compare with others, but also that's all good. We need to advocate for our kids and make sure that they are on track learning the right targets. So definitely contact your teacher, contact your principal, and kind of tell them what you're seeing with your student at home. You see so much more than the teacher may see virtually, because you know your child so well. So you know your child. So talking with that teacher, making sure that things are set up so that they have those pieces. And just to add on to that, at the elementary level, we are giving packets to any families that aren't connected through the internet, and have reached out to schools to make sure they're delivering those packets that have the same learning that we're doing remotely as well, so that all kids have the same, as Pat was saying, the same curriculum and the same expectations district-wide.
We are getting so many questions tonight. It's really wonderful, and the panel's done a great job. Do you mind spending a little bit more time and taking some more questions?
Sure.
All right. Let's go. And by the way, we will be posting responses to these questions. If we don't answer your question tonight, we're capturing all this information. We'll be able to provide that information to you on our website. How can parents get involved in helping plan the new normal when it comes to a return to physical school and continuing social distancing?
Well, I can start to speak to that, and I think others can as well. But I do think within our department, we're planning for summer and fall. And in that planning, we're taking input from all stakeholders to make sure that we're not missing anything. It's a new normal for all of us, and we've been in a position of being a little bit reactive. All this came pretty fast and pretty quick. And so now we're in a position where we want to be proactive when it comes to future thinking, when it comes to our students and their health and safety and their student achievement. I think that those are high priorities. We talk a lot about the social emotional learning, and all of our K-12 teachers right now are giving a lot of lessons just on the social emotional aspect of understanding where kids are right now and what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And we want to make sure that all of our kids feel safe, all our families feel safe, and take that information in planning for the future. And I think that our parents can help by giving input with that too, so that when we do start up in September, that we are well equipped to make sure that we're doing the best we can for our students.
You know, this is Volunteer Appreciation Week, and we want to say a big shout out to our volunteers and the wonderful contributions that they do make. And our parents are our children's first teachers, and we do respect that and know how important that relationship is. And so we want to make sure that we underline that. Here's another question about the distance learning, remote learning. Will the district be providing any ongoing distance learning opportunities throughout the summer to help get kids up to where they should be next fall?
We do have summer school planned, and we go along with summer school as we have in the past. So, but we are going to be paying particular attention to students that need to catch up or need to make sure that they have credits and make sure that they're passing their classes and doing all of those pieces. So even though we're doing similar summer school than we always have done, we're focusing mainly on our students of need and that need that extra support during the summer. And there'll be ongoing summer school planning as well.
And just to jump in, there have been questions about Chromebooks and allowing students to keep the Chromebooks over the summer so that they can continue learning. And we typically bring the Chromebooks back in the summer months so we can do repairs and get them ready for the fall. But we are actually talking as a group and planning to have students be able to keep the Chromebooks over the summer to be able to continue their learning.
Here is a question on grading for elementary students. Will elementary students be graded similarly to our secondary students now with the pass-fail?
So right now that's a work in progress, and it should be coming out shortly with our assessment for elementary. We will be doing progress reports. A lot of it is looking at not only the engagement of our students, but making sure that we do no harm, similar to the secondary thinking as well. So there probably will be more emphasis with comments, teacher comments on those report cards to reflect really what they've seen from their students over the last few months, rather than a certain grade. But definitely wanting to make sure that all students feel that they've accomplished things and that they're moving on, but also parents really need to know kind of where they've hit the mark and where they haven't. And most of that probably will come through reflections and comments that the teacher makes for the students. But again, that's a work in progress. And so that will be coming out in the next week or so.
Here's probably a question that maybe between Ginny and Steve. If I'm not able to see the assignments or even that they have been submitted and graded, how am I to follow up that my students are doing the work?
I would say, again, check with the teacher. and feel free to ask those questions. They know best, your child. And so at the secondary level, we do have the Canvas. So maybe Steve can talk a little bit about Canvas and how parents can access that. At the elementary, it's more about that connection with the family and the student. So Steve, you want to take it away?
Sure. In addition to the Chromebooks, a number of years ago, we purchased a learning management system, Canvas. Teachers are using that as a digital classroom. And so as assignments are posted and work is posted or discussions are happening in the class, it's happening in that online environment, and parents do have access into that. And if there are questions, I would encourage them to talk to the teacher or building administrator, but parents do have the ability to participate in that campus in seeing what their students are doing.
I might throw out an idea too, just coming from my experience as a teacher. I would always share with parents, ask your children. You do know them best. You are always their teacher, and now even more so. Our teachers have been given real clear instructions that the expectation is that students learn. So there can be an assumption on parents' part that there is work that's being offered that can be done. So I think having those conversations with students, and then like Ginny said, if the response is not satisfying, get in touch with the teacher and they can fill you in on what that work is.
And I just didn't want to miss an opportunity. There are 2 webinars tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon and at 7 p.m. The Teaching and Learning TOSAs will be providing parent training and information on Canvas. And I think information is posted on the main page of the Beaverton website.
And in addition, at the elementary level, there is many parent communications that have been going out to families, and just to check and make sure that your student is receiving that notification for parents, and help for parents to learn some of the resources that we're using, including Zoom and Canvas, and Seesaw is a big one as well. So there's many opportunities for parents to interact with and get that training and resources so they can help their children at home.
As a parent, it feels like with all the measures being taken, while helpful and adequate, have been reactive. What is the district doing to be proactive in planning for the future and being better set up to respond to these kinds of emergencies?
I think that's a great question. And I think I kind of referred to it earlier, but it really is about, this took everybody by surprise. There's no doubt that we all are learners, and we're reacting at a very fast pace. In teaching and learning, spring break was not necessarily a break. We were definitely up and moving and making sure that we had resources for our kids to start as fast as we could get it going. So I agree that it's been very reactive in that sense. And even our team has talked regularly about, okay, how do we move into being proactive and making sure that we're delivering what we need to do. And I think we're all now reaching that plateau of figuring out, okay, this is where we are. We know where we need to go. And we know that there's a lot of work to go on in the fall, and making sure that all our students are where they need to be, which is going to take a great deal of planning. We do have part of our administrators in TNL already have focus groups that will be put together that consist of administrators and teachers to make sure that that planning for fall is happening, and that we give as much direction and resources and guidance for our teachers as we possibly can. And then we can be in that proactive mode. So we're working on it.
To expand on that, Maureen, I think it even goes, I think it's a great question. It goes beyond Beaverton. I think this pandemic has caused our State Board of Education, our legislators, to look at not only, education here in Beaverton, but throughout the state. And I believe what we're going to see is some policy changes and some state statutes possibly change to allow some different modes of learning, to be able to count some instructional hours differently, and to accommodate issues and events that come up like this. So we are not being reactive. And right now, I would say the 197 school districts in Oregon, we are being reactive because we've never been through this. So I think this could be an opportunity to glean on some of the great instructional strategies that are taking place in our schools right now, to learn and glean from some of them, but more so for some of our policymakers to be able to change some policies to allow some of these creative strategies to be implemented.
Here's another question from a high school parent. I have 2 high schoolers and the bar expectations are very low with barely an hour of work a day and no clear curriculum. Can the messaging go out through teachers to teachers that many students can be on Zoom and handle more work?
I think that's great feedback for our team. And again, the same message is talk to your teacher and talk to them about your student in particular and what their strengths are and what they can do, and see what's out there for teachers to help support. And I'm looking at Pat and hoping he can answer some of this. I think that piece of we can't, our teachers are pretty amazing at what they do, and they really want to accommodate their kids and their parents. So making sure that things are in place to make that happen.
Yeah, and I would just emphasize our teachers are doing an amazing job of trying to navigate this, as we've all said, as we're learning it. The one thing that we want to make sure doesn't happen is that teachers end up feeling like they need to accommodate the needs of some children at the expense of others. So we have teachers with students whose families are really just trying to get their basic needs met. And so for those students, if this teacher is assigning work to just add to a load because some students are able to do it, that's going to be additional stress felt by that family that's not going to be helpful to their well-being. So I think, you know, talking with teachers individually, saying my student seems to be able to handle more work. Is there more that they can do? To encourage our staff to offer supplemental work, I think is fantastic. But we really need to be careful about doing remote learning in a way that honors all students that we serve.
What would you say to parents who are considering enrolling their students in online K-12 education for next year? What would you say to assure families that BSD will be able to provide rigorous education and social consistency in the coming school year?
I don't know if Don wants to take this one on, but I will start. I think I am so impressed with what Beaverton has done and what we continue to do. Do I think that we can do better? Yes. And I do think that we're working hard and striving hard to make sure that next year is as rigorous as we know it to be. This is my 37th year in Beaverton, and I know that we are one of the strongest districts around. And if we don't get it right, we need to make sure we do. All of our kids deserve a rigorous, excellent education. And I know that we have a lot of people here committed to making sure that that happens. And I know that that doesn't happen everywhere for every child, but I know that the dedication is here, and I know that the commitment to our students are here. So in your thinking of leaving Beaverton, I would just say I think that, but that's my bias. I just think that you're leaving somewhere that is going to do whatever we can to make sure that your child is successful and doing well.
I'll just echo what Jenny said. If you go around to any of the school districts, we have school districts basically coming in and we're sharing our platform and our framework, and districts around the state are using it. And so much so that the Department of Education sent folks up here to look at it so they could be able to reach out into other districts to share what we're doing. And just to remind folks that it's been less than 30 days since our distancing order was ordered by the governor. And in 30 short days, John Poplinski, I don't know if John's on here right now, and his team of incredible TOSAs and other administrators have put this together in record time. You would never expect anybody to have to put something together this complex in this amount of time. So I guess my thoughts on any parent wanting to do what's best for their child, I would always encourage that. But before you hop into some of these online programs, I would encourage you to really take and look at their success rate with their students, credit attainment, graduation rates, and everything. But what I will say is we're on this. This isn't just, hey, we're going to get this done this year, we're going to go back to normal. We are focused on long-term, and once again, what can we do to glean from this and possibly provide additional opportunities for our students. Maybe all of your learning is not going to be in a bricks and mortar setting, and our teachers will not maybe always teach in a bricks and mortar setting. So it'll be an opportunity. What I would say with the incredible people that are at Beaverton, give us some time and you will have a world-class education.
This is a question regarding grades. My son is a middle school student in the district. Why can't the district do what schools in Washington are doing and offer A through D or incomplete? What is the incentive for students to stay engaged in the remote learning?
Well, once again, I think the direction that came out from the Department of Education was really looking at equity issues, and I support that. I really do support that. I believe we have teachers that will keep our students engaged, and hopefully the engagement is that love of learning. And I know that a lot of our students are motivated by grades, and but really it's that love of learning. It's that being able to accomplish and knowing that I need to be engaged right now because I am at some point coming back to school in some fashion or another, and I can't afford to have gaps in my instruction and or my learning. And as you said, that different states are doing a lot of different things. Oregon decided to really look at an equitable approach, and I support that approach as we want to do no harm to our students. And yes, I know that some of our students at our secondary level and even at our other levels have really been working hard over the last semester to raise their GPAs, and that's great. They've had some learning, but really overall, I really believe that what we're doing right now here in Oregon is going to provide the least amount of harm to students, and especially those students who have been marginalized, underserved, and we're not giving a grade that's dependent on your family income or the resources that you have in the house. So I don't know, Pat, if you want to add anything to that.
I think too, just one of the questions that we hear too is, could we consider offering a choice, letting students choose between a passing, complete, or a letter grade? And I appreciate the creativity of that response. I think with regards to equity, when we're looking for the least bad decision, passing grade or not or incompletes across the board is a way of ensuring the most equity for everybody. If we allow for a choice, that choice is in effect a privilege that some students and families don't have at this point. So because we can't guarantee that access to the curriculum for everybody, this is a way that's going to have the least amount of harm for the greatest number of people.
Toshiko, I have some questions about how we're serving our English language learners. Can you talk a little bit about the services that are being provided?
Yes, so at the elementary level, students receive a certain number of minutes of teacher-led learning experiences, and ELD supports happen within this block of time. Newcomer and students at the emerging level do need additional supplemental supports to advance their progress toward language proficiency. In this case, these students may receive supplemental supports during non-teacher-led time. So in other words, multilingual learners will not be excluded from classroom teacher-led instruction in order to receive their language supports. Rather, these supports will be embedded during this time. However, there is flexibility for classroom and ELD teachers to collaborate on delivering teacher-led instruction to newcomers and students at the emerging level, but this should be strategic and intentional with common goals. At the secondary level, students will continue to receive their language supports via their ELD teacher if they are running an ELD class period model. or through their content and ELD teacher if they are in an integrated model.
And then Danielle, did you want to speak to any of the services that are being offered to the special education or students with disabilities?
So as I said earlier, so our case managers are reaching out to students. They are working on, I think one of the shifts and one of the, I guess, positives of our current situation is the collaboration and consultation that will be occurring between our specialists and families. So really helping to support families to be able to mirror or replicate routines within the school or the home setting. So if we have certain transition protocols or other skills we're working on, now parents will really be able to dive in and do those similar things within their household. So we are still continuing to provide specially designed instruction in terms of reading, writing, math, social skills. We're providing speech language pathology services, occupational therapy supports, adaptive PE. So still moving forward with the full range of services that we provide for students with disabilities who receive special education. Additionally, our counselors are working with our general education teachers on ensuring that students continue to have access to 504 accommodations. So those students who have disabilities who don't require an IEP but have a 504, they're working with those general ed teachers to make sure that accommodations are being implemented even in this distance learning setting.
Okay. Couple of more questions. We've got maybe about another 10 minutes. That will be at 8 o'clock, and I think we'll call it a night. So thinking about the summer, will schools still have open office hours over summer? Will summer food programs still run over the summer? And just some other planning that's happening for the fall. And maybe we can have Ginny answer that question for schools office hours during the summer, and Carl maybe for about the food program.
So our school, well, and it depends this summer. It's really a difficult one to answer. I'm not sure about the opening of schools this summer. So in the past, we definitely have had our secondary schools open in the summer hours, and at the elementary, usually 1 day a week. But that may look very different this year. So we're not certain of when schools will be open. Carl?
Yeah, our summer food programs will continue as they have each summer. So we'll continue that process in the future. If we have location closures and changes, we'll certainly notify our community ahead of time.
Okay.
Maureen, is it possible to add something around extended school year? And I think Chico will want to talk about the multilingual department summer school. So we are continuing to plan on having extended school year for students with disabilities who are eligible for special education, who are eligible for that service. So we're continuing to move forward to planning as though it will be on site in July. However, we are also preparing a backup plan in the event that we need to offer ESY through a virtual model.
Yeah, and I will include for our migrant students and for our English learners, we are planning for summer school opportunities for our students. Right now, we are planning for a virtual summer school experience for our students, unless we hear otherwise.
All right. So we're coming to the time to close our closing comments. So I'd like to ask Superintendent Grodin if you'd like to make any closing comments, or anybody else on the panel.
Just want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy evening to do what you do. My heart goes out to you and your families. Whether you are a parent, a staff member, this is a unexpected event in our lives that is really stretching our ability to be normal, to do normal things. And I just thank you for partnering with the Beaverton School District. I see lots of comments about here, how can we help you? And that really means a lot for us. write, email, pick up a phone, talk to your teacher, talk to your principal, call the central office. We do need your help. As I said earlier, I think this is a time that we really need to come together to collaborate to do what's in the best interest of our students. So I think we're so fortunate to be in Beaverton, to be in a community that supports education the way that you do, whether it's through a levy, a bond, or just being visible today and providing your questions. As I said before, we're not doing things perfect, but we need and we'll take your advice and we'll try to do what is ever best for your child. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Maureen, can I just add to what Don had said? And also in regards to remote learning, all of us at home are on a learning curve. So I'm reaching out to the parents of these wonderful kids that we have in Beaverton and saying, really give yourself some grace and have some compassion. We can't do it all, and you can't do it all as parents either. You become a teacher and a parent at the same time. This is all new. So I just wanted to add, we all deserve grace at this time, and know that we can't all do it perfectly, but your kids are going to prosper by kind of what they're learning right now at this time. So and to echo what Don said, just thank you. And thank you for your comments, your support, your interactions with your kids every day, and your discussions with teachers and principals. And so thank you.
Carl, did you want to close it down for the night?
Absolutely. I just want to thank everybody, as Don and Jenny have said. As Don also stated, we're not perfect in this process. We have a lot to learn. So please do not hesitate to give us your suggestions. We want to become better at this. We'll never be perfect, but, and we never want to be perfect, because we are constantly evolving. Our students are very diverse backgrounds, and we want to serve all of them. And so we thank you for your time this evening. And please know that don't wait for the next town hall. We all have emails, phones. Give us a call. Let us know what we're doing and how we can improve. So thank you again.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in the future.